Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's discussion with the great saxophonist Rick Margizza. Hello, Rick.
Alex,
How you
hello.
doing
I'm
today?
good, man. Yeah.
All right. So, as usual, please confirm that you can see us and hear us, and let us know in the chat also where you're watching from. It's always fun to know who's there and where you're located. And while we do that and give a couple of minutes to some our friends to join us, let's start by listening. Let me introduce you to Rick musically with a track from. Is that the latest album, Rick?
That is my latest recording. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's listen to the title track. All right. Beautiful, Sacred Hearts. Yeah. All
Thank you.
right. Cool. So I'd love to talk about that album, but that would take us another hour, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we are on the clock. So let's just say hi to our friends. We have Noah from the US, from around Chicago, if I remember. Um, and actually, he says that he took a lesson from you 30 years ago in Manhattan.
Wow. I know.
Wyoming. He's from Wyoming. and he met you in Manhattan 30 years ago.
Crazy.
And we have a friend also from Paris who actually saw you at La Gare. And well, that is a reason why I wanted to invite you to this discussion today. It was to talk with you about your experience in this club, La Gare Le Gore, if we want to be complete.
Precise.
And this club has kind of been a home for you because you've been playing musically. I mean, you've been playing there every Monday for how many years now?
Well, we started in 2017. Um,
And so
Pulled out my headphone. Hold on one second.
you've played over 300 concerts.
Yeah, sorry. I pulled out the cord from my headphone,
Ah,
so so let's
all right.
back up. Yeah, so I started there in 2017, and what we did is we did a couple weekends, and then we were offered the residency for every Monday, and we would do like maybe 2 months or 3 months at a time, and
Mm,
then maybe take a month or two off, and then come back and do the same thing. And it was after COVID, the lockdown was over. They said, why don't you guys just do Mondays forever until either they're unhappy or we're unhappy. So it started really 2021, basically, where we were there every Monday. But it's been, yeah, and so it's been a pretty long time. And we marked the anniversary of our 300th concert on December 15th, which is our last gig before the holiday
yeah,
break.
I was there. It was great to see that. So it didn't start right away as a residency. You played there for a couple of months, right?
Yeah, as a 2 month residency at a time,
Okay.
but it wasn't a year long thing.
And do you remember your very first gig there, the very first night?
Well, I should back up a little bit. We did also, before that, for a couple of years, have a residency at the Beza Soleil in Paris,
Hmm.
but that was only once a month.
Yeah.
Whoever's like the second Wednesday of every month. So that was
Mhm.
nice to have, but still,
Yeah.
only one time.
Once
And
a week is better than once a month.
yeah. So I remember going there first because I heard about the club, and our mutual friend Olivier Bourget was playing with his band.
Mhm.
And he was, I think it was a weekend. So the weekends there are always like a lot really crowded. And I saw the vibe of this club, of these young people and standing up. And it was the opposite of kind of a normal or regular French jazz club. And I just said, I have to play here.
Mm.
And I knew the guy who books the music from some years ago. So I kind of had an in with him. And I just called him and said, Julian, I want to play. So I actually don't remember the first night we played there, other than it being as much fun as I thought it was going to be.
So one of the things that motivated you to play there was the audience.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about this club, because a definitely a club that is different from any other jazz clubs in Paris.
Yeah, you could go online and just look at some of the photos. It's an old train station, and it has a really roots kind of vibe. So it reminds me of like a club in East Berlin or something.
Hmm.
And since they don't, and this is a huge distinction, they don't charge an entrance fee.
Yeah.
So as a result, young people are able to come in and hang out. And as much as I love playing some of the other clubs in Paris and other jazz clubs around the world for that matter, they're all pretty expensive to get into.
Yeah.
So it's usually an older audience. So the energy of playing for younger people. Um,
Yeah. Does that influence your the repertoire you decide to play, or the way you play?
yes, it's not that I don't play jazz, whatever. I mean, because that's such a big, that word can mean so many different things. But just say an extreme example, I won't go to Ligar and play bebop tunes, but I'll play some stuff that has more of a groove. We get people dancing to our music, but it's not anything that I feel like I'm selling out. It's like, and I hate to compare, but it's kind of like some Pat Metheny-ish kind of stuff where it's involved compositionally. There are different sections to play over, but it has a beat to it. It's not just straight ahead swing jazz. So a lot of times after the concert, we get young people saying, "This is the first time we've ever heard jazz."
Yeah.
And they say, and now I love it. As opposed to maybe going into some small club and you're playing impressions for half an hour and it's so esoteric that they were kind of overwhelmed by it. So
and also I think, I mean, we've heard it in the opening track that we just listened to. Your composition are involved. They are very through composed, but they're always, and harmonically there's a lot of things that are happening, but they're always a singing quality to the melodies. We can sing it. There was even a singer in that track, but even in the recordings that I listened to, where it's just like quartet or trio, both in your compositions and in your playing, it's always very melodic, very singable. I mean, I love when like the melodies are like angular but yeah, it's harder to grab a younger public with that.
Yeah, so I think the audience comes in and hears that essence of it, but then when we start soloing, and we definitely get crazy sometimes, they're more open to that because it's not just one thing, it's more inclusive. So once we grab them, then they're kind of available to be challenged a little bit, as opposed to being challenged directly from first note,
And I noticed that there's a lot of young people. That's really the first thing that we notice compared to other clubs in Paris. But there's also older people, like really like jazz fans, that also go there because they know you play there every Monday. Because Lagarde, they don't have. It's not a jazz club in the sense that they have jazz every night of the week. They have different bands and style of music, and we have a nightclub in the basement, so it's a very unusual everything is unusual about this space. And we also have some gray hair and like
on stage they have gray hair.
No, but it's nice also to have this diversity of people. It's not just high school or students or young people. So actually, I found just for those who don't know, let's just have a quick look at a video I found on YouTube. So it's poor quality, but I didn't find that many. I know you recorded the last concert. Is it going to be released somehow?
Yes, we're in the because we recorded it right before the holidays, and I just got back, so we're going to start looking at what we have, and if not the whole concert, we're going to put together a kind of an edited version of it. There are quite a few clips on YouTube, but scattered. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, that will give you an idea. It's really super low key. It's very rough. There's a great vibe. And so let's have a quick look. All right. So just to show a little bit of the space, there's like graffitis and like carpets. It's just this old train station that was abandoned, and somehow he managed to turn it into this club. And so on the video, so we saw the quartet,
Yeah.
the same quartet that you've been playing with. So that's Peter Giron on bass, Jeff Boudreau on drums, and Manuel Oshman on the piano.
Right.
Actually, can you just tell me how did you meet those three musicians, and how did you form this band?
Well, Jeff, I knew back in the States. He's from New Orleans, and I lived in New Orleans for a while. So it was around 1983 or 84 that I moved there.
Mhm.
So we know we knew each other there for like 3 or 4 years before I moved to New York, and then Jeff moved to Vienna and then moved to Paris. So one thing that kind of made it easier to move to Paris is I had a friend here who would kind of help me out with some of the stuff. So I knew Jeff for a long time. I met Peter just through different connections in the jazz scene here in Paris, and he was part of the origin of the thing called Jazz and Wine in Bordeaux. So I was doing some of those gigs with him, and Manuel came on one of those gigs, and I just loved the way he played. And when it came time for us to do a gig, those guys were available. And one thing led to another, and that just kind of became my band.
Yeah. So what do you look for? What kind of qualities do you look for in musicians when you want to get a band together?
Uh, it obviously it depends on what the specific gig is, and if it's for a one-off thing, if it's for a festival, if it's for a. So when I started this band, I think, I mean, my memory is terrible. I think it was because I knew that we were going to be playing at the Bézé once a month. So people that I know personally and feel comfortable with. So there has to be that kind of thing where I could also just hang out with them and go have a drink or whatever. So just to be able to get along with them. Jeff was kind of the obvious choice because we've known each other for so long, and he's already played a lot of my tunes over the years.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to do kind of an original based project. So, and then when I heard Manuel play, just his harmonic knowledge and his elegance and his sense of style, there's something that kind of just kind of clicked when I heard him. I said I would really like to kind of play with this guy more. And Peter's just solid, also just his spirit and the way we're all kind of friends together.
So because the musicians, we don't lack of great musicians. We have fantastic musicians everywhere, but it's interesting that the human side, like the fact that your friends also is also important, because sometimes we get to play with fantastic musicians, but maybe for XY reason there's no human connection, the vibe is not great, and sometimes sometimes it works with
sometimes it is, absolutely. And
most often than not it doesn't work, but sometimes the magic still happens.
Yeah.
But the human aspect is very important. That's true.
And I know also it's not that I picked these guys because they weren't busy, but say somebody like Larry Grenadier or Brian Blade, I would not ask them to do a steady gig because I know that they're so busy that it would be really hard for them to be there every week.
Yeah.
So, and certainly Jeff and Peter, they're all busy sometimes. So I've gotten some people to come in and sub, but also people who I know are going to be here a little bit more. So it makes just the administration part of it easier.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, and so over 300 concerts. Although, as we joked about when we met at the last concert of the quartet, as you just mentioned, sometimes you or someone in the band has to 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 go away for a tour or something. But still, that's a huge amount of concert together. What changes when you play with the same band with week after week, for so long? What does that has anything changed or evolved?
Yes. Well, certainly, I think individually our playing has gotten stronger because just the idea of doing something regular and having something to use as a point of reference. So one Monday I might play one of my tunes and not feel happy with what I played or what I soloed over these chord changes. So during the week, I will work on that. And when I get there next week, I'll have the week before as a point of reference. So I think my playing has grown stronger.
Mhm.
Also playing in that room because it's a big room and uh, I don't really, after all of this time, I really have never counted the capacity, but 150 people maybe.
Yeah,
It's not like playing in an intimate room. So I had to develop the ability to really communicate to a bigger room and a higher amount of people. Um, so uh, I think it's for me, it's made my playing stronger because you have to get on stage and really deliver.
mm,
There's really no time to kind of be timid and try to, you have to kind of from the beat one just be there for people. This may seem funny, but sometimes for me talking on the mic is much harder than playing.
yeah,
And Jeff used to say, when you're talking, they can hardly understand what you're saying, and because I'm really shy, and so I think I've gotten better at just expressing myself and having fun communicating with the audience, uh, and that also brings people in if you tell a story about the song or if you're able to get them to laugh a little bit. So uh, that has changed. And then certainly your repertoire. One great thing about having a steady band, and these guys are always available to rehearse, is that over the course of 5 years, I think we have maybe 40 of my songs that we can play. Uh,
mm,
what's a little tricky is I found that certain songs really work in certain parts of the set. So, like, we have a Randy Newman ballad that we play, usually the third tune of the first set, and it's so effective and it's such a beautiful song uh, that it was hard to replace that one. But then I realized if people are going to come back to hear us, they don't want to hear that ballad every time.
yeah,
And like the song that we end with, where we get people kind of singing with us, is also really effective and also really fun. But once again, if we do it every time, then people who come back are going to say, oh, we already heard this. So the repertoire, you have to kind of balance what works and what could be fresh and what to bring back and, kind of rotate things like that.
yeah. And I imagine so. The great thing is that you have this at the same time this goal. Like, oh, I have this every Monday, So yeah, I need to prepare maybe some new repertoire. You have the last Monday to kind of see where you're at. Oh,
Yeah.
that was good, or that I need to maybe go shed a little bit
Mhm.
the bridge of his tune or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like this. So this is great. Um, do you ever talk or rehearse on stage or before or?
Um, yes, it got to the point where sometimes instead of maybe going to Jeff's studio to rehearse on the weekend or whatever, we would just show up at the club earlier and run through some new stuff, or maybe stuff that we rehearsed a couple weeks ago, we would just refresh our memory. So sometimes, yeah, we would do that and just do the work before at the club.
Yeah. Is when you bring a composition, is there some kind of a collective thing, or is it like that's pretty much how you wrote it, or is there some is there, Jeff
Yeah.
suggesting stuff, or maybe Manuel?
Uh, it varies from extreme to extreme. I think more so it's people giving me suggestions. Not always, but it seems like mainly from the drums, because if I write like in Logic, basically. So the drum track on Logic is always going to be something static, because I don't know enough about programming drums, and it's time consuming. And I know that obviously Jeff is going to know much more about a drum groove than me. So I take it in and say, what do you think here? Or he'll just automatically say, I think this needs to be this. I'm maybe more specific about the harmony than the rhythm part of it. And I assume that you've had this experience where you think a song is finished and it feels really good in the sequencer, and then you take it into rehearse and it's like a disaster. Or it's pretty obvious that this section is too long, or this section needs to be longer. So a lot of times the form changes when you play it with and in front of other humans.
Yeah.
And then we might rehearse a tune and get it to the point where we think it feels pretty natural. And then when we go to the gig, playing in front of an audience, I said, the first solo is starting too soon, or there needs to be something between this solo and the next solo. So the form is kind of the most elusive element, and that you have to be flexible and willing to let go of your initial finish ideal,
Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe let's listen to another track. You're Everything. Who's playing on that album, Rick?
This is Joey Calderazzo on piano, Scott Colley on bass, and a great drummer, maybe not as well known from New York, named Ian Froman.
All right.
And this is a Chick Corea tune, and we didn't talk about what you were going to play other than the first tune.
Yeah.
On this, so I could say that I don't feel that comfortable on this track.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Okay, well, let's listen to how you sound when you're not comfortable. right. Well, it sounded pretty, pretty good to me. But that's interesting. What makes you feel not comfortable or
Um,
comfortable, and what do you do to get comfortable?
uh, I was having a good day until I heard that. Yeah, well, that was over 20 years ago. So that's kind of an example of going into the studio with great musicians, but not having really played together much and reading in the studio uh, and playing fast in the studio. So that band going in and just playing some standards where you don't have to read and more relaxed tempos is a completely different experience than reading. And those changes are not easy at that fast tempo. And Billy Hart talks about this great thing about all the different types of chops you could have. So you have practice room chops where if you're practicing every day, you sound great and feel great when you're practicing. There are chops when you're playing at a small club. There are chops when you're playing festivals because that's a completely different experience. When you're playing big festivals, if you do that a lot, you get better at that. Sitting in chops, if you're going around town sitting in a lot, that's a much different experience than going to a jam session where you haven't played in a while. So all these type of things get stronger or weaker depending on how much you do them. And recording studio chops is one of the main ones. So if you're rarely in the studio and you go in there maybe twice a year and all of a sudden you have headphones on, you're playing in a situation that is not anywhere near what it really feels like to play with musicians, where you're in different rooms where you can kind of hear everybody, but so it's a very synthetic situation. And I think one of the reasons a lot of the great records that we all love are so great is because like Train was going into the studio 10, 12 times a year, sometimes more. So you just get used to that. Brecker in the studio is amazing to me because he never seemed to be bothered by the fact that he was being recorded, but he was also in the studio sometimes 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
Right. So I was uncomfortable because I didn't know that song. I had headphones on and it's a fast tempo, which is not my strong point. And so it was like 3 or 4 different things that kind of just hit me at once. If we had time to do maybe another take of it, or
yeah. Well, that's very interesting. That's great. It's true. To was chops in depending on the situation.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And actually, that makes me think. As with all those concerts at La Gare, has there ever been a night where it just didn't work out, or you felt not comfortable for some reason? Or was it always fantastic?
No, for sure. When you're played that many times, they're not always going to be great. So, and it sometimes could be because you didn't sleep well and you're tired. So could be a physical thing. Sometimes, if it's too cold, the horn never warms up, which happened a couple times. Sometimes your reed just doesn't work. So, I don't think there's ever a night where everything was bad, but there's certainly nights where I walked out of there thinking, I'm really glad I get a chance next week because this night just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
also sometimes, I mean, for me, I don't know if that's if you have the same thing happening to you, but sometimes I play and I feel like, oh yeah, this is cooking, and then I try to record as much as possible and listen back to try to have a little bit of a critic of what happened, see what was good, what was bad, and it's not rare that after, when I listen back, what I thought was a complete disaster was actually good, and what I thought was cooking was was not so good. It's really does that happen to you sometimes?
that is very depressing. Yes. I record almost every night there. I recorded almost every night, and I think I have maybe a backlog of 50 concerts that I haven't even listened to yet. Partly because of time, and partly because I'm afraid because of that feeling when you think it was really good, and when you listen back and it's not. Uh, that's very discouraging, and it also is dangerous to me because next time I play, I'm thinking as I'm playing and it feels good, it's like maybe it's not as good as I think it is. So we have this discussion: is it worse that way, or is it worse where you think it's bad and you listen to it and it's not that bad? Because one, you feel good as you're doing it, and one, you feel good as you're listening to it. So yeah, so that's a very strange
Yeah,
phenomenon.
but also I think taking risk and sometimes failing, or I mean I don't know if we can really talk about failing when you're on
Hmm.
stage and playing and improvising, but that also what makes this music such a music that needs to be experienced live
Yes.
more than on records. I mean, we love
Yeah.
listening to Train and so on, but I wish I could have experienced Train, in a club or on stage, because that's completely
Yeah.
different. And even if something is not working, I think especially in a place like Lagar, um, the audience feels that something is happening.
Yes. There's something about the struggle that, a lot of people say they like to hear that mistake or that struggle, where when we're doing it, it doesn't feel that good, but it's hard to be really objective about it. Um, yeah, and
Yeah,
also I think sometimes listening to recordings too soon after you did it is dangerous, because say if I played something last night that I thought felt great and I listened to it today, there's not enough distance between it. Or
yeah,
if I thought it was bad or whatever. But so sometimes if you leave a couple of weeks go by and then listen to it with kind of a little bit of distance, your experience of it is different.
yeah. All right. Well, let's listen to another track. Hopefully, well, hopefully that's a track where you felt more comfortable, embraceable. That was really your session, right? So I think you decided what to play and how to play it, right?
This one, and yeah, the other one was also my record. So
All right. Well,
this
and
one,
I love the arrangement of this one. Let's have a quick
okay, sure.
listen. Yeah, the young Rick Margitza. All right. Well, let's talk about so the decision to change the band because that's why you had the party in December, the last concert of the quartet. Why did you change the band and who are the members of this new band?
Uh, so the new band is Xavier Disson, who's a great multi drummer. He plays drums, but also a lot of percussion, and he has some electronic drums and loops, and he kind of sings. So he's kind of like a Trilak Gertrude character,
Hmm.
where it's more than just a drum set. And the bass player is somebody who I met as a result of playing with Nicolas Fomer and his
Hmm.
Miles Davis project. A great bass player named Philippe Bussonnet. I think
Okay.
he was a bass player in Magma, the French
All right.
band.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so nothing against them, but the decision to change was actually not mine. It was the club's.
Oh.
Because the club, they said globally, because they opened up the dance techno club downstairs, that they were starting to lose some money.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, is there any way I could come up with a trio to save costs? And uh, they also thought that people might have been, uh, he called it audience fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
getting tired of us because we've been there so long. But I tend to disagree with him on that, because the room continued to be full.
Yeah.
So maybe some of the initial people who had seen us a lot weren't there as much, but we kept getting new people in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but regardless, in order to stay in the club, he said, I want you to do something different. And
Mm-hmm.
change, which sometimes is not always comfortable, I think is healthy. And he said, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have the quartet back. But
Yeah. All right.
uh, the idea to do more of an electric trio, I think for now we're calling it Electric Margitza.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's clever or corny. So um, I felt like that room, the energy that it required to go in there with a trio and just playing kind of standards with a bass, an acoustic bass and drums, wouldn't be right. It would probably work, but I just thought, if we're going to do something different, do something different. So I'm using some pedals and some electronics.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that something that you were already kind of fooling around, or is that something completely new?
I've always kind of been interested in it, and during COVID, I had a lot of time on my hands, as we all did. So I ordered some stuff and started fooling around with it. Um, but it's what's the word? A little bit of a black hole, because the
Yeah.
more you start using it, it's like, oh, well, I need this to make this work. And now I realize that this doesn't work. So it's like you can keep buying stuff because you think your setup is not complete.
Yeah.
And there's some guys who do it really well and really know that stuff, and I'm like a baby
Hmm.
with it. So I'm using just some basic stuff.
Yeah. Are you trying like some electronic saxophones such as the AMEO or the Iwi or things like
Uh,
this?
the Emio I have, but it's not really meant for performance. So sometimes I'll fool around with it at home at night, because you can play with headphones on and it feels like a saxophone. So
Yeah.
yes, the Iwi, I tried it, and it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Especially at first, I couldn't even get a C major scale out. And I said, there's no way I'm going to take the time to learn this. So to me, to hear what and watch what Michael did with that is as extraordinary as watching him on the saxophone.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't play the Iwi. I have the Imeo. I don't play the Iwi because yeah, I've heard everybody says like it's another instrument. Like
It's
it's
another instrument. You have to be so
um
subtle. Yeah.
yeah. Seamus Blake plays well.
Yeah.
Plays great. He has another kind. I don't remember, but like it's kind of look like a spaceship.
I
It's not
think
that.
that, yeah, I think that's the latest version of it, but the technology is kind of the same. It's just, instead of a straight thing, it's more compact.
Yeah. So, how are you going to approach the this new band and the repertoire? Is it Are you writing some new music? Are you revisiting some of
Well,
your stuff?
yeah,
How?
so sorry. The thing that was a little sad to me is that I just came up with about 8 or 9 new tunes for the quartet, so we never got a chance to play any of that new music. Hopefully, we will. So I got a little discouraged and haven't felt like or inspired to write anything for this new trio. But there are some older tunes that, and a couple that we never played with the quartet from some of my older recordings that seem to fit that instrumentation. So we introduced those. Um, and I'm starting to get some ideas for some older tunes and maybe some tunes by other people. Like I got the idea to do Bobby McFerrin's "Don't Worry, Be Happy,"
Mm-hmm. Right.
which actually really worked with that instrumentation. So like that one, and we're doing. Actually, this is funny because we played the Weather Report tune "Mr. Gone,"
Mm-hmm.
and so we had one gig so far last Monday, and it turns out that Jocko's son Felix was in the audience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I met him after the gig, and I said, "Did you hear Mr. Gone?" And he said, "No, I came in on the second tune." So he was really bummed that he didn't get a chance to hear Mr. Gone. But so I almost played it in front of Jocko's son, which is kind of fun. So yeah, I think it's going to be a work in progress for a while because when you're with a certain situation for so long, it feels sick. So
it's good.
I'm
It's going to make it the sub for you a little more.
I thought of that.
Because actually, sub for you, for people who don't know, like
Yeah.
a few times you gave me the honor to call me to sub for you, and with Jeff and Peter and Manuel, it was the red carpet. So with this trio, which is not saying that those musicians are not as good, but it's so different.
It's much more specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking if one of the two guys can't make the gig, it's going to be hard uh, to replace them because the music, like some of it
Yeah.
is going to rely on loops and some electronics. So um, as those situations come up, maybe those nights turn into be more just kind of acoustic trio instead of trying to replicate the electric project. Um, and I should say we say that it's an electric project, but it still feels acoustic. It's just
Hmm.
a little different. It's not like super loud, like a rock and roll kind of thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it has the elements of electronic stuff to it. But it is, yeah, we just did one concert and I can't judge it. Part of me felt uncomfortable that first night, but I know it's just going to take some time to find
Yeah.
our way.
I mean, this is pretty exciting for you to, kind of go back from zero and
Yeah.
try to develop now a new thing, and again having this consistency of playing every Monday,
Yeah.
giving you a way to look at what you've done, and a goal for the next Monday, and some some motivation also to practice,
Absolutely.
which makes me think about this, your book, 365 Days of
Yeah.
Practice. So you guys can click on the link on the top of the screen, which is something that you've done during COVID, right?
Yeah, I started it right before COVID. Obviously, like none of us know, we didn't know it was coming, but it hit us in the middle of the project. So, I mean, I started in January, so it wasn't the middle. So by March, we were all dealing with it, and it kind of gave me something to focus on. Uh, and then it took a couple of years after that to put the book together and make all the play alongs and all that stuff, and then finally have it published.
And it's basically every it's not like a method. It's just like every day you practice something, you write it down, and you compile it in a book.
Yeah, I was just that's one thing that made it easy is I wasn't thinking about a format. I just opened my notebook, looked at something that I thought was interesting, and posted it uh, by hand with a description. But then when I put the book together, I realized I did have to add a whole first chapter that describes my method of practice and how I
Mm.
develop these ideas. So it's not just 365
Mm.
licks. It's a way that the book describes a good a way of practicing that helps you develop fresh material. I hope.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I have to get that book. Um, all right. Well, maybe let's see. For we're about to finish. So I wanted to talk with you also about some advice and perspective we can give to maybe younger musicians,
Hmm.
because you teach also in a school in Paris at VMAP. I know you do master classes, so you teach quite a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
But what does a residency like you have, for instance, teach you about music that you couldn't teach in school? Both you and I are teaching, and there's certain things that we you have to learn on the bandstand. So
Yes. Yeah. I realize that it's how frustrating is not to have a chance to play in front of people. Um, as we all know, there are less and less clubs to play. It's harder and harder to put together a tour or a string of gigs because there's less of a circuit, less
mm,
clubs. Um, I just was in London and I played 2 nights in a row, which is like a rarity. And it wasn't usually that hard to to get something like that, let alone go out and play 3 weeks with the
yeah,
same band. That's another thing. Training those guys were playing 40 weeks a year. And that I never experienced because by the time we got to that point, unless you're really famous, you couldn't support that type of activity. Um, so even those 2 nights though in a row, by the time I got to that second night, I felt much more in touch with the music and my horn and what I played last night and the sense of referencing and working out what didn't work last night. Um, and if I do a week in a row, by the fourth or fifth night, I'm a different player. Uh,
yeah,
so I'm not complaining, but even once a week is not enough, but it's better than once a month, of course. So uh, this thing about just keeping in constant touch with your vocabulary and your language and I heard that Pat Metheny after the concert, he takes notes about the concert,
mm.
um, like a diary, which is pretty amazing at
Yeah,
his
because
level.
I don't know if you've seen like his next tour. Uh, in 3 months, they have 55 gigs. So I don't know if he listen to, if he records and take notes of each gig, but
That's
that's a lot.
crazy. That's crazy. So for younger musicians, it's just to try to get out and play as much as possible. And if it's not in front of an audience, just go out of your way to organize jam sessions. And you guys are probably doing it anyway, but um, don't get lazy. Get out there
Yeah.
and play with each other as much as possible. So you're keep this kind of running commentary with yourself about and be honest with yourself. What's good? It's not all bad. So give yourself some credit, but also be honest and realize I need to work on this. I need to work on this.
Yeah.
And it's
And
a
and also a lot of students sometimes are afraid to play because they want to wait until they play it perfectly. Where, I mean, for me, I try to tell them, it's better to play a lot and make mistakes
yeah.
than waiting to play perfectly, because you're never
You
gonna
never get
reach
there.
that. You're
I,
never gonna be happy and say, oh, that's perfect. And anyway, that doesn't really mean anything. So I think it's important. It's more important to try to play a lot
Hmm.
than waiting to play perfectly, because that's actually playing a lot will help you to play
To get better, but never perfect.
better. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I realize the more I play and the more I practice, the less I know. I know it's getting better because because it can only get better, but it's also the standard gets higher. So there's always this,
yeah.
it's a quest. I mean,
And so, what would be one advice for a young musician who would try to build a long-term project today?
I mean, in terms of a band or in terms of just playing wise
Maybe with a band.
with a band, well, like when I was in New York, yeah, going out to as many jam sessions, first of all, so you make connections. And there might be somebody that you just have a hookup with that, for whatever reason, really works. Like for me and the drummer on the one recording, Ian Froman, um, there's just something about him and the music he listened to and the way we got along together that clicked. Uh, so make these connections and then say, hey, do you have time to get together every Tuesday in the afternoon for a couple hours and rehearse? So if you can get a quartet together, it's going to be younger players that aren't as busy, have more free time, and say, what if we do this once a month? Once a week or once every 2 weeks, we commit to getting together. And at first, maybe just playing, and then if it works, then it turns into a band. We could each start bringing in a tune every time we get together. Uh, so make these
Mm.
connections with the idea of this might be able to turn into something.
Yeah. All right. And before finishing, actually, I have a few questions that people sent me.
Uh-huh.
I'll read them to you. But
Sure.
before that, I wanted to close with something that probably people open most of the time when they talk to you. It's your experience with Miles.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, someone told me, "Oh, I'm surprised." When I was posting things about our discussion today, he said, why don't you? I'm surprised you didn't mention he worked with Miles Davis." And I thought, obviously, I thought about it, and then I thought also, well, maybe one, it did many things other than that, after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And does that even ever kind of um, tickles you that people always bring this back, or
Uh, no, I mean, and of course, to get into Miles, we could do a whole nother hour
yeah,
about
yeah,
that. But people are so interested in that, and there's so much mystique about that I've had to learn about patience. And when people come up to me, and it never got me angry when they're asking about them, but it also could be frustrating because it's such a big question.
hmm,
Tell me about Miles. I mean, what part of it, I've learned to be gracious, and depending on the amount of time I have, then I'll go into, either how I met him or what the experience was like. So yeah, I have to keep perspective about that. How to
yeah,
somebody else who has never seen him play yet, a young musician, how much it means just to hear secondhand about it.
yeah. But when you worked with him, that must have been you must have had like a good tour, with many concerts. That to go back to the topic of playing night after night. That
Yes,
was the case, right? With
it was
when
it was a 6 week tour, but unfortunately, because he wasn't in the best health, we didn't rarely would do like 2 nights in a row. We would play, take a night off, then play,
mm,
but still, it was relatively consistent.
yeah,
Um, it was a little uncomfortable for me because I was kind of thrown in at the last minute, and like I said, that we don't have time to go into that story, but um,
Yeah.
It was sometimes a little bit like me against the band,
Mm.
partially because I didn't feel comfortable, and then them wishing I was Kenny Garrett. So it was a bit strange, but I eventually found my way. But a little later in the tour than I wished it would have been. So I always
Yeah.
wish there was another tour to have followed that momentum.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is hard when you sub for someone in a tour, like it happened to a friend of mine, a pianist who sub for the last 3 or 4 days of a tour with Peter Erskine.
mhm.
And it was great, he had a great time, but that's definitely not an easy position
It's not an easy
to.
position, and especially when they didn't know Kenny was going to be gone, and it happened in a weird kind of strange way. So I was there all of a sudden. They weren't prepared for it.
Mm. Well, that will be
Next, yeah,
another talk.
yeah.
Um, well, got a couple of questions that people sent me.
Mm.
Someone asked if you do you have a manager, and or have you ever had manager? What's your experience with this?
Uh, I had one manager back when I was with Blue Note, and I think I had two different managers that did not last long. They got me a couple gigs, but never a tour with my band. So it was a little disappointing. Could have just been the wrong person at the wrong time.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, uh, the ratio of successful stories of musicians with a manager is not good.
It's
It's
not good. No.
most of the time it's like, oh, nothing really happened, or yeah, he
Yeah.
got me 2 gigs, and
Yeah.
it's
I,
sometimes, I mean, it worked, but it is difficult, and it's another.
yeah. I think it's more important to have an agent than a manager. But even with that, I haven't had good experiences because either you have an agent who has enough connections, um, and at that point they're busy with people with bigger names, uh, so they don't do enough for you. Or if you have somebody who's younger who's really hungry, he's working for you but doesn't have enough connections to really make things happen. So in my experience, if you have an agent, he might get you a couple gigs, but and the same thing with a manager, unless they're really high end. And at that point, you're kind of famous enough that you don't need them other than more kind of
Yeah.
administrative stuff. Uh, and was lucky throughout my life, especially earlier on, where the phone was just ringing. So people would call me for things. Uh, I was never like an internet, get on the phone, kind of book my own things. I never had that energy. And I think you have to be a little bit more proactive these days.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, but I think that time has passed for me. So I'm just kind of still waiting for the phone to ring. And luckily it does, not as much as it used to, but I'm kind of happy, you know.
Yeah. All right. Maybe we have time for one more question. Someone is asking if you feel like your sound has evolved over the years.
Yes, absolutely. And I could tell. Well, also, it's a little difficult to tell because those recordings are done in different studios, different mic setups, and all that stuff. But uh, I think my sound has become bigger. There's more of a wider range of overtones, whereas and also my setup has changed. I think I'm playing a bigger mouthpiece, but with a softer reed. So maybe the resistance is the same, but there's a bigger chamber or something. So,
Mm,
and I'm playing a different saxophone now. That was a Mark VI, and now I'm playing a SBA.
okay.
So I think my sound is just a little deeper, and I think that also happens as you get older,
Yeah.
as you grow.
Mhm. And so, what's your setup? Mouthpiece and reeds.
Uh, it's an Autolink that started as a 4-star, but it was open to like it seems extreme, but I had it opened up to copy a mouthpiece that wasn't mine that I really liked. So it's a 110, so it's about an 8.
Wow.
And then Rico Jazz Select 3 Soft. So it's a relatively soft reed with a bigger tip opening.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently I bought a hard rubber Autolink Reso chamber that is the same opening. It's about an 8-star. And when I first played it, I thought, this is amazing. It's like I'm going to switch back to a hard rubber mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got it home and I started playing it, it was a little disappointing because it wasn't this revelation that I thought it was going to be. So I'm back to my Metal Link for now.
All right. All right. Okay. Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Unless someone has maybe a last question, and while we finish, I'm just going to put also the link if people want to get in touch with you, follow what your whereabout. You told me the best is to get in touch with via Instagram. So
Yeah.
I put the link up there if you want to connect, follow Rick. Well, Rick, thank you for taking the time to share your experience. It was very interesting to talk and see your commitment with the band, with the club, and the commitment of the club. That's also interesting. So thank you very much, and I guess we'll have to talk again in 6 months, see how the new
Absolutely.
trio,
Yeah.
your perspective after was maybe 6 months,
That'd
a
be
year.
interesting to do a follow-up for sure. And thank you, of course, for having me. I really appreciate being part of your world.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure, very interesting, and you have a masterclass coming up for us.
Yes.
Which will be, what did we say? We said February the 19th.
February 19th. Yeah.
February the 19th, guys. So put it down in your calendar. We'll have a masterclass with Rick Margitza. So I'll send you all the information and everything about that. I'm sure that will be fascinating. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I'll talk to you soon, Rick.
All right, my friend.
See you at La Gare or for a coffee or at school.
Absolutely. And thanks for everybody for being here. And again, thanks, Alex. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao.